There are many interesting spots in GTA 3 that even after 20 years have gone ignored. One of these locations in particular is Portland Beach and its surrounding areas. This beach is different to any in the series. It doesn't really feature any NPCs, it's barren, deserted, and somewhat eerie. The large cliff face that overlooks it features high-rise apartment blocks with few windows. While we've spent a lot of time frequenting Salvatore's mansion, not many players ventured around the back of the property to find the cliff overlooking the beach. This spot features these benches positioned overlooking the sea as well. It's a fascinating spot that offers a surprisingly refreshing quietness compared to the rest of the map. Another location in Portland worth mentioning is the diner just under the Callahan Bridge. Just opposite this small diner is a small dirt road that can be found which leads to a small private wooded area, again offering a big contrast from the urban jungle that is Liberty City. No missions take place here, and it just is this small dirt road and car park. It's all situated above another unfrequented tunnel which leads to a dock, which is only used in one mission, making this area arguably even more eerie than the last one. But next up we have St. Mark's Bistro. We're all aware of this place, no doubt, but as pointed out by a fellow YouTuber in his video going through some forgotten spots in GTA 3, by using a vehicle we can access a very open area behind these high-rise buildings, and it's really quiet back here, and there's just a giant area of grass. Many of the houses don't even have windows that overlook this grassy area. The lack of any playgrounds or pathways makes it really interesting. Barren and empty, but there is a stunt jump here, which is really odd because there's no way to get in here besides the glitch we did at St. Mark's Bistro. Staunton Island is another story. There aren't many unvisited locations because the island is very compact and small, but there are a handful that players likely have never explored due to the difficulty in reaching them. In order to reach these spots, you'll most definitely need a dodo plane and some pretty advanced flying skills. Our first spot is Kenji's Rooftop, which can be found on top of Kenji's Casino. It features some trees, some water, and has some pretty beautiful lighting at nighttime and sunrise. However, with no way down besides jumping and no way up without a plane, this is one of the rarest unexplored locations that you can get to. The next location you've probably never visited, again, is accessible via plane, and this is the Liberty City Cox Stadium. There's no way in or out of this stadium, and even using a van to try and jump the barrier won't work. Rockstar clearly never intended us to access this location, but if you fly a dodo plane like an expert like me, then you might be able to land inside, and this is what it looks like. Really interesting spot, and pretty crazy that we're not even able to access this at all in the final game. Just next to this stadium, however, is a spot you can access, but you've likely never done so. This is because a small dirt path can be found, and no missions take us down here, but by walking down here it reveals this peaceful pathway that wraps around the entire northern section of Staunton Island. There's a ton of NPCs down here, and you do get some really good views of Shoreside Vale. Speaking of which, let's move on to Shoreside Vale before we move on to GTA Vice City, because there's one spot on this tiny island that many of us have never visited. This can be found near the dam, and it's a brilliant view from down here, but getting here isn't actually that easy. It's surprisingly hard. There's only one road in and out of this spot that can only be found in the industrial section of Shoreside Vale, which is the least frequented and explored area of all. So it's no surprise why many of us probably never went down here and explored this warehouse area. But to make it worth it, there is a shotgun and a pickup in this spot as well. Alright, well, let's move on to GTA Vice City, because the first spot I wanted to explore is the Leaf Links Golf Course, but one place in particular on the golf course that you might not have explored yourself. This place is iconic, but some aspects of it are rarely explored by players. This place has NPCs and golf caddies driving to and from the range. It features unparalleled views of downtown Vice City and the sparkling blue ocean water. But many players might not have realised that there is a small bridge that leads over the main road to an untouched section of the resort. Only one mission takes us here to this golf course, and it doesn't require us to find this small bridge or cross it. On this side, we can find more interesting sections of the course, like this water section, which has its own small island in the middle, and also another totally separated smaller island with its own bridge. It even features its own dock for those who want to arrive in style by speedboat. Speaking of boats, next up we have the abandoned structures out to sea called the Sea Shacks. The location itself consists of 3 medium-sized stilt houses, one of them being destroyed. The area is unusual, and using a PS2 emulator with a Rockstar debug menu, we can see there's no interior inside of interest. As for these sea shacks though, they are pretty much just a mystery. We don't really know why they're here, but they're really eerie and isolated, and the fact that you need a boat just to get here and there's nothing of interest here, this is definitely one of the most forgotten locations in Vice City. But our next location can be found downtown. There's this large staircase here on the eastern side of the island which leads up to an elevated area of high-rise office buildings. Continuing around the corner reveals an office that is fully accessible. And this is a really unique spot, as no other locations can be found like this in the entire game. This office is full of working NPCs, and most interesting of all is that we can go inside the lift and walk around on the upper floors. You may recognise this spot from the G Spotlight mission, but you can access it in free mode even before that mission takes place. So technically it's not really a secret location, but it's definitely not common and definitely got forgotten in time. We can use a motorbike to jump to a rooftop opposite though that's even harder to get to. I would argue that this spot is even rarer, as many people probably never even thought to get over here. It's kind of interesting just exploring this. I don't really know why there's a hole in the side of this building anyway, but it's really cool architecture and definitely a spot that not many people would have stood in. So we all remember this small forgotten shopping mall. This place was featured in one mission, then never seen again. It's actually a very cool location and could have been a really cool spot for a gun store or a restaurant interior. I really like this water section that gives it a really cool 80s mall aesthetic. You can definitely picture yourself coming here when you were younger with your parents or something. It's like one of these locations that's lost in the back of your mind or something. But what I find most interesting about this place, however, is the odd parking lot that accompanies it, because first of all, you've got this really unique spiral entrance, which is far too small for any car to fit. Then you finally reach the roof, and it's always deserted, which I found really odd. I mean, see for yourself, come here in your own spare time and you'll find that there is never any vehicles on this rooftop, and it makes it a really strange and uncanny location. Speaking of parking lots, and trust me, I know it sounds boring, but there is another one at the docks that frequently goes unexplored as well. This one has a kiosk that's supposed to be manned, but there's nobody in it, and going down here kind of reminds me of that driver tutorial level. If you know what I mean, hit the like button and comment down below, because that was notoriously an incredibly difficult introduction mission in the Driver game series, and it kind of looks very similar to this garage down here, this parking lot. So let's move on to GTA San Andreas, because there's plenty of locations to discuss in this one. Home in the Hills is a cut-through area. A lot of players never really spent much time here. Sure, you've passed through or flown over it, but how many times have we actually stood there, explored and soaked in the houses that are situated around this area? The gated mansions, so on and so forth. I mean, this staircase here is a prime example. I never even saw this place until I was actively looking for forgotten areas. I walked on up this staircase to see that there's a mansion up here with a swimming pool. Other locations have mowers in the garden, lawn mowers you can drive, and other cool stuff like that. But the game never really asks us to go here, and there's no safe houses within this vicinity, making this pretty much a forgotten area. And there's a few hidden spots in San Andreas that I bet you've never seen. I mean, how about this hotel in Los Santos? You've probably driven past it, maybe you even recognize it, but what you might not have known is that there's a secret car park underneath that you can access. Or how about the radio tower overlooking the Big Ear in the desert? Many of us have been to the Big Ear at least once or twice, even though no missions take us up here. But did you know that if you walk up to this radio tower, you can teleport to the top and grab a parachute and get awesome views of the surrounding area? Many people didn't even know that that existed. But the most forgotten major location in the entire game is probably Bayside. I mean, it has a great view of the Gant Bridge, aka the Golden Gate Bridge. It features an abandoned lighthouse and the boat school, but besides the odd landmarks here and there isn't really any reasons to visit this location. Another forgotten location in San Andreas can again be found in the desert. And yes, there is a recurring theme here. The desert is just full of cool gems. This time I want to shift our focus to this underground tunnel. It serves no purpose in the game besides housing a bribery star, so maybe you were aware of it, maybe you weren't. But what's most interesting about this place is that it just seems to be hidden here for no apparent reason. I mean, there's no main roads necessarily close by, and it doesn't really lead anywhere specific either. It's a really niche spot, which many of us probably didn't know existed unless you're a hardcore fan. And there's plenty of locations like this that many of us probably passed over the years but never actually gave our full attention. And the last location for this map before we move on to GTA 4 I want to show you is located in the far northern section of Los Venturas. How many times have you gone as far north as you possibly could? Well, if you did, you might have discovered this gated community which features several tennis courts and a large golf course which is never used in any missions. Many people didn't even realise that this golf course existed. There's a few times where you might drive past this area or fly over it, but no missions actually take you this far north in this map. So I guess surprise if you've never seen this before. Alright, let's move on to Grand Theft Auto 4, because there's plenty of locations in this game that definitely go unexplored, underappreciated by the community. And it's not their fault, it's just that the game never takes us down here, apart from 1 or 2 missions. So the first location, which you'll definitely agree with me, is Charge Island. It's definitely an overlooked location, which players typically just drive over and drive through when crossing the bridge, rarely stopping to actually explore this place. With no missions, activities or residential areas of interest, there's little incentive to visit this place, but there is a surprisingly large amount of vegetation, there's a baseball field, and it just feels like this place should have had a little bit more purpose. I mean, why is there a baseball field here? I mean, why? There's no houses around or anything, so you're telling me people travel to this tiny island just to play baseball? I mean, things don't add up here. Another rarely explored island is Colony Island. Unlike Charge Island, it has a slightly more developed landscape, but it's kind of tricky to reach because there's no direct access to it via bridge. So despite having more structures and more of an industrial setting, it doesn't really have anything that's engaging for us to explore, making it an easily forgotten location. However, of course, there are some missions that do take place here. It's just that the game never really incentivizes us to visit here. And there's only one bridge in and out, which makes it extremely difficult to access. And just before we move on to GTA 5, our last GTA 4 location that goes majorly unexplored is the southern area of Alderney. Alderney is the final island unlocked in the game, so it makes sense that many of us probably never explored it, particularly in the southern section where not many missions really take place. However, the entire southern section of the map is a rather interesting place. It's a very heavily industrialized section, separated by its own landmass and 2 bridges. There's no reason to really visit this entire area, but if you do, you'll notice that of course it houses places like the prison and some huge factories. But besides that, this place really is the final place you'd think of exploring if you're playing GTA 4. Let me know if there are any hidden gems in this area that I missed. So let's move on to our final game, GTA 5. And GTA 5 is a weird one. Despite its large map, there's really no forgotten areas due to its popularity. However, there are a very few small areas worth mentioning. One is this really small pond located in the north section of the map near the lighthouse. and the lighthouse itself is another unexplored location. Sure, a few missions here and there take us here, but when you stop and think about it, this entire northeastern section of the map doesn't really feature any missions in single player or GTA Online, so nearly every location has been used and abused at this point. But this area of the map near Mount Gordo is very underutilized, and that makes this area quite special in my opinion. Besides the ghost Easter egg and so on and so forth, there's not really any reason to visit these locations. And the next GTA 5 location I picked was Lake Vinewood Estates. This place has no missions that take place here, and I can't really even think of any missions that take place here even in GTA Online. But anyway, long story short, this place is populated with huge mansions complete with swimming pools, with an incredible overlook on the local lake. This is probably one of only a few locations in GTA 5 you could truly say that many players never really went out of their way to explore. This place is also kind of awkward to get to because you kind of have to go out of your way back on yourself in order to reach it, because it's located just south at the bottom of the hill of the observatory, which really isn't a place where many players drive. A staggering 98% of my viewers often aren't subscribed to my channel. If you're one of them and you like GTA content like this, then please do consider hitting that subscribe button to stay tuned for more videos just like this. And I have tons already uploaded on the channel that you'll probably enjoy. I'll see you guys in a future video, and the next video is going to be all about Laszlo Jones. So if you're interested in that, make sure you stay tuned.